Welcome to the Bergen Forum, everyone, and thank you for coming. Just two announcements. One announcement is next week's Bergen Forum, which is our own John D'Angelo, Professor of Chemistry, who's going to be talking about the Nobel Prize, the history and iniquity of Alfred Nobel's Prize. That's next week. Today, we're very happy to have Neil Jacobs, who has been to Alfred several times before. He's an internationally renowned 12-string guitarist, and he is giving a concert in Miller tomorrow at 7:30. So that's when he's going to be doing a bigger kind of music performance. But today will be a mixture of music and talk. So please welcome Neil Jacobs.
Thank you very much. It's been about, I think, 20 years since I'd done the Bergrum Forum. I did it, must have been 20 years, right? I would think. And I did history of the Roma or the Romani people, and I did big slideshow, and it was, nobody taped it, but I thought I did a really great job. But I decided not to do it again. I decided this time I would talk about my experiences serendipitously, how I got to be a world musician and how I got to run off with the Gypsies, which is the mother's worst fear, and the music I've learned along the way and how I've applied it to my compositions. So I thought I'd tell a little story how I got started, and it's real. The backstory, I hope it doesn't take too long. I got to keep an eye on the time. I didn't know this was a short program, so I'm not going to play too much, but I'm going to accentuate and give some idea of the music that I used along the way, and I picked up along the way. I was in college way back in the 20th century, and I quit. I only lasted 1 year. I ran out of money, and plus I was so hooked on music that I ran off to New York City to make my living. And I failed pretty much right away. I wasn't ready. But I came back to Ohio and fell into a project. Of course, when you're a musician, you'll take a struggling musician, you'll take any project at all. I was a jazz musician at the time. And there was this project about this international star that nobody knew about, and it was a documentary. And I was asked to help edit the music and write music for it. And I took on the role. Now, the star was, somebody probably don't even know, he was bigger than Elvis in South America, and he went on to socialism in the Eastern Bloc and became a huge star there, but nobody really knows him. And there have been many attempts at doing documentaries on him, and this was one of the documentaries that I worked on. Well, it just so happened in 1985, I was invited to Moscow to the Moscow Film Festival, the Evil Empire, and it was a very scary time for me. I was a very shy person. I never really had been anywhere, and this was going to be my first trip abroad. Was to Moscow, the Evil Empire. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'll just go. Why not? I'll go. I'll spend 7 days there. I'll keep my head down. Don't get in trouble. Get out of there as fast as I can, and just take a look around Moscow. And so that was my first trip abroad as a guest of the Moscow Film Festival. And it was an interesting time. I was in the hotel right next to the Kremlin, the big, huge Hotel Rossiya. It was the biggest hotel in maybe the world. I don't know. It was huge, not particularly wonderful, but big. And right next to the Red Square and the Kremlin and all that. And I thought, oh, this is pretty weird. I'm kind of scared, but okay, I'll sit it. I'll be out of here pretty soon. But I had nothing to do at night, so I went down to what was called the press bar. It was in the hotel, and that's where the CIA agents and the KGB agents were, and they were plotting whatever they were doing. And I would play guitar down there at night. And one night, Igor came out. He was drinking, and he came out because it was actually Gorbachev was just in, and he declared that prohibition was going to start in a few weeks. So they were all drinking Stalin's favorite wine that night because they're getting rid of it. And I found out that Stalin had many favorite wines during my trip, but we had a excellent. So anyway, I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but Igor came out and said, I want you to come play for my father-in-law. I think he'd really like to hear you. And I said, okay. And it turned out that he was Tikhon Kraynikov, and he was the head composer of the Soviet Union at the time. He'd been there since Stalin. I think Stalin appointed him, and he was an amazing character. So I went to his house. I didn't know all this at the time. I learned it later, and there he was with this bust of him and the huge piano and his beautiful palatial place. And he said, "Well, play for me." And I said, "Geez, I don't know anything. I don't know any Russian music or anything. All I know is from kindergarten. I remember one song from kindergarten. I think I'll play this for him, and this is what I played." Well, thank you. That's kind of hard to do from nowhere, but okay. This is that's all I knew, and he thought I was a rather humorous American, and he just sort of laughed. It was a big Russian laugh that I'm not going to try to mimic right now. And he said, "Well, you must stay in Russia. You must stay and learn music here." And so, of course, he didn't. I found out later that he knew Prokofiev personally, so it was and he had his wife sent to the gulag. So it was like, okay, I didn't know what kind of company I was in, but in fact, that was the reason why Prokofiev did children's music, but he didn't want to get in trouble for playing the incorrect music at the time. So I didn't know all this. Luckily, it was tough for me at all. And he decided to have me stay for over a month in Moscow. I had few changes of clothes and put me and I was guest of state, and invited me to be in the World Youth Festival, which is a big propaganda, but it had people from all over the world, 120 countries or more, and all the artists and the musicians. And he helped me get me on the American cultural delegation to the World Youth Festival, which was amazing, in Lenin Stadium, and the Perestroika and Glasnost and the whole business at the time, where everyone was partying in the streets. And I got to meet, the big news is this, the long and short of this, I got to meet musicians from all over the world, and I became fascinated with world music. I got to meet great Russian folk musicians and the like. So I came home with a new attitude. I was a kid, a very young kid, and I came home to America when I did finally. And with if I can do that, I can do anything. And so from there on, I was led along a lot of different paths, led me to all over Eastern Europe and the world with different musicians. So this is how I got my start. Now I came home and I started performing my fusion. I would be playing music in clubs in Columbus, Ohio. And one day, then this is a recurring theme, people would always come up to me and ask me to do things. And this group, the Živali, it was a group of music and dance of Yugoslavia, 30 more people doing all the music. And Yugoslavia encompasses a lot of great folk music. It was Serbian, Macedonian, Montenegrin, Slovenian, Croatian, Bosnian, all the musics. And they came backstage after my show and they said, we'd like you to compose gypsy music for our grand finale and our big show at the Ohio Theater next year. And I thought, I don't know anything about gypsy. I said, yeah, okay. I didn't know anything about it, but I said, yeah, I can do that. And why not? You always say yes. So, but I said, and I thought about it a little bit. I said, but first, I'd like to join your troupe. And they were touring around the country, and I joined their troupe. And I wanted to learn the music of all these countries. I just, this is a great opportunity. So I did this, and I joined. I learned all the tambouristans, all the little tinkly instruments, and all the instruments from Bosnia, the saz and the oud. I learned everything I possibly could and tried to apply it to the guitar. And I knew that eventually I was going to have to compose this great piece for their big show. It's going to be this big solo 10-minute solo piece, and they gave me some tapes of the Gypsy, which I say Gypsy, but the Romani, because that's the way it was always spoken to me until recently. So anyway, I know it's not the correct way to say it. So from here on, if I say Gypsy, I really mean the Romani, okay? But they gave me tapes. They taped some gypsies in the train stations, and they wanted me some really nasty tapes. They said, "You want to learn from this and transpose this stuff and make a great piece for us." I said, "Okay." But so I'll get to that later. But right now, I'm going to show you some of the Balkan music I do know and I learned along the way. Just examples. So one song is a song that every country I seemed to go to had a version of. And it was made famous in the movie Pulp Fiction. You know it. You probably know the song. Dick Dale made it famous in the California Surf version of this song. But it goes back way back. It goes back to the 19th century. This song, nobody even knows exactly who wrote it. So this is the kind of music I learned. And this is one of these styles I learned. And I thought I invented this scale that's in this song. It's a double harmonic scale for the music majors here. And I didn't know that existed. I thought I invented the double harmonic scale, but this is Miserlou. Thank you very much. It is thought that song is actually Egyptian, Greek, Turkish, and many other possibilities, I think. This is just an attempt to give you an idea how I developed my stylist on playing. I got all this bizarre mixture of styles. I'm totally self-taught. I would just go to other countries and immerse myself in the countries, and I would travel to many places. Now here's where I learned some of the music. One of the influences I did have was from the Serbian, Bulgarian, and Macedonian music, where I became familiar with odd meters. And I know I try to teach just a little bit, and like most music in the West, most people in music, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. You just count 1, 2, or 1, 2, 1, 2, or waltz music 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that kind of thing. But in the Balkans, they have a different way of counting, which is they do mixed meter. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2 would be one of their 7/8, for instance, or 7/4, or 7/16, depending how fast it was. And I became fascinated with these odd meters, and the Bulgarians will have even more bizarre 11/8, 13/8, and so on and so on. And just fascinated with this kind of thinking, to think in this odd way, that where the music keeps moving forward. It doesn't pause, because it's always leaning, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, you can see how infectious that rhythm is when you dance it. Now, most of the music is made for dancing, and of course, that song has lyrics, and I love looking at the lyrics. That song was about Reap Namatsa, means scat cat, basically. It's about singing and dancing at a holiday dinner and going back to the table that's all laid out, and the cats are eating the food. And it's about chasing the cat around the house. So I thought very interesting lyrics they have. Some of them are bawdy at times. Another favorite, I'm going to run out of time so fast here, is 9/8. That would be, I'll just give you a little snippet of this. This is about a famous song. Now, the last song I played, I mixed up a Macedonian and Serbian song. There's actually 2 songs. And when I was in the refugee camps during the war playing and touring around there, I got in a lot of trouble for that. So just because I don't know what it means, they knew what it meant. And every camp was different demographics of people. Here's a quick example of 9/8, which is also considered, it's called the Gypsy Nine. If you look at Wikipedia, they probably changed it by now. It's special Chochek kind of rhythm. It's just, I call it 4/4/4. It's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You got 4 beats. It almost sounds like 4/4, but it isn't. You can't play 4/4. I call it 4/4/4. snippet. That's from the bathhouse. It's about the bathhouses, a famous bathhouse in Nice, Spa. It has a lot of strange lyrics. Very interesting and classic. In fact, if you look it up, it'll be one of the songs they give to represent 9/8 music. I'm sorry, I'm not going to play the whole thing because time. So now my travels. Just recently, I got contacted by someone in Sarajevo I actually made some videos, some very special music of theirs because I learned it when I was in Syria. I was there during the war and performing, and Sarajevo is an interesting place now because you're thinking of Ukraine, and Sarajevo was almost like a similar situation. It was bombed and under siege forever. If you're older, you know that it was a horrible place to be. It was just bombed forever. It was a major city, a beautiful city. And when we went to perform there, they built a stage for us in the center of Sarajevo, and the mines were everywhere still, and it was very dangerous. There was no place to put us up but in one of the snipers' nests. That was one place that wasn't bombed, and they built a huge stage for us in one day, and we played in the center of Sarajevo. It was a beautiful concert, a beautiful experience. But part of it I took away. I learned the music of the bittersweet music of the Bosniaks, and it's Sevda and Sevdalinka music. It's beautiful stuff, and I posted a couple videos on YouTube of this music, and I think no one ever did instrumental and versions of this that I know. I mean, other people play Sevda music in the authentic way. I made my own 12-string guitar versions like I do with everything. And I was contacted by a writer in Bosnia, and I didn't, he kept messaging me. I thought, no, this is a scam. And I put him off for a year, but after a year, I said, okay, I'll talk to him. And it ended up interviewing me for 5 days, and they put a whole spread in the Stab magazine, 5 pages of me. And he was so amazed with my story that I would just travel around everywhere and learn the special music of their culture, because this is a very traditional and treasured music of Bosnia. So I'm not going to have time to play any of the music. That's the sad part. I'd like to move on to other things. It's just another story. I guess it's important to take into account all this great treasure trove of music around the world and try to honor it. I'm going to play. This is going to be still in tune. Just the introduction to what I called gypsy music at the time. I love to do this kind of music. I was invited, another concert I was at I had someone come backstage. He happened to be the secretary of the president of Hungary. And he invited me, you must come to Hungary. You have the soul of the gypsy. I said, I don't know. I don't know anything about it. But so I took him up on it, and I went to Hungary. And of course, I became familiar with the Csárdás in Hungary, and how Western composers love to borrow like Brahms and Liszt and many others. They like to borrow elements of gypsy music. So here's an example of a Csárdás, a very famous Csárdás. I do a lot of other Csárdáshes, but this is one that you might recognize by Brahms. This is after he met a crazy gypsy violinist, and he started writing music like this. Yes. Well, thank you very much. I know all the classical people are screaming now. He does, I'm used to just playing. I'm a folk musician, and I like to say I'm from the Claude Monet school of classical music, but I like to bring it back into the folk realm where it really originated. So it's never perfect. Well, I'd like to, so let's see, what should I talk about now? My life was a lot of this. I had a lot of adventures throughout my life. I was played music for a Baha'i master at a university once, and he said, you must come to Switzerland and perform at the Baha'i graduation ceremony. And so I said, okay. And the Baha'is were a big part of my going into other countries, because they said, oh, well, you must go to Slovenia and play for the Baha'is there. I said, okay. And then and they said, well, you must go to Croatia and play for the Baha'is there. Well, it just happens in the middle of the war, and there were explosions all around me, and I could hear. They didn't come to Zagreb, the Serbs, but they did. They were in the area all the time during the war, and there was the Croatian army was in the streets with bullhorns trying to roust everybody to go fight the Serbs at the time, and I was playing at Zagreb University. And then I said, oh, well, you must go to Poland. So I rode and meet those Baha'is there, and I went up to Poland, and I got an agent there, and he got me a job playing for the Polish army after the wall fell down. So just playing for the people of Poland, which was really a remarkable experience. So many of these things has come from being invites for me. And one of my favorite invites was when I did that actual piece that I talked about earlier for Givoli, and the head of the Arts Council in Ohio came down, and he said, would you like to go to Spain and be a cultural representative of Ohio in Spain and learn the gypsy music? And I said, okay. Yeah, I always say okay. And I said, I'll go. Yeah, it sounds great. Andalusia, Seville, I'll be there. So they sent me to Spain for what was just a few months. I ended up staying a year. They assigned me my own gypsy guide named Blas, who would come at any time, day or night. And he would come get in my hotel, and he didn't speak English or anything. He would just point to my guitar and point to me, and he'd do this. And he'd take me away in his minivan, and we would find wherever the Roma or Gitano were meeting, the special places, not the tourist places, the places where the families met and the people. And he would make sure that I had to soak up every last bit of the culture, the passion, the singing, the words, the stories, the dance, the music, the whole thing. You think of flamenco, you're only thinking about the music, but it's really the oral tradition of the gypsies is amazing. And that's because they had no word to read or write in their language, their Romani language, and it was all oral. So I would go these places and I would soak up every last bit of it. He would make sure I did. And when they were talking, singing back and telling stories, he would push me in between them till the spit was on my face. And I would just close my eyes and go back in time 1,000 years. It was a great time for me. But I was also assigned a master flamenco, one of the best master flamenco guitarist teachers in Sevilla. And I never came to the lessons because I was never around, because I never had a chance to practice. I was always running off with the gypsies, like my mother's worst nightmare. So I spent this year there, and I just soaking it up. I really wasn't able to learn flamenco the way I was supposed to, and but I did take a lot of the knowledge. I decided to develop my own style of music playing, and I call it Spanidonian, because I use these elements I just discussed. I used the double harmonic minor, I use 7/8 time, and I use the Spanish elements. And then I do what I call reverse flamenco, which is my invention, because flamenco's like this, I'm like this. So it's all sort of my invention, and I want to play a little Spanidonian music before I leave here. And so this is one of my Spanidonian numbers. Thank you very much. Well, that's the end of my little talk now, and I was told to leave time for some questions, and or if you have any music you'd like me, other music you'd like me to hear. You know, there's lots of stuff on my. You go to my website and not the YouTube. Don't go to YouTube and look for me. They'll send you nowhere. But if you go to my website and go to videos, you'll see a lot of the stories. And you'll get to the SEBTA thing. I kind of shorted that, but I have videos of that and other musics. So if you have a question, I'd love to answer it.
Oh yeah, thanks so much. Am I transmitting right now? Is this, yeah, it's going out? Okay. I was wondering, in your time traveling, I was wondering about you exporting culture. In particular, I was wondering, are there particular genres or techniques or even specific songs that you
Exported?
Yeah, that you like to play from American folk music for people elsewhere?
That's a good question, but I did not do that. I was there to learn. I really was. I could have made a fortune being many musicians go over there and play the American card and folk music because it was very popular. But I didn't do that. I was there to learn, and so I don't think I ever played anything. I'm not really a cover musician. I'm not a good copier of anything. I never had the gift of copying music, and so I always had to create my own music. So I did not do cover songs. Of course, I'm an instrumentalist too. I don't sing, so that puts me in. I would not be. Just wouldn't do that. But thank you for the question. It's a good thing. I never really thought about that, but I've always was there to learn. I'm there to learn. I'm not there to spread my culture. That was. Any more questions? Wow.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you have all the guitars tuned in the same way?
No, never. That's why they're here. I don't want to retune them. But not really. I have one tuning I'll use at the concert tomorrow. I call it D- tuning, and it's a special tune. It's a secret tune you can't know, but I'll be playing that beat up old guitar. You know, the one with that displays the really bad playing technique here. As you can see, that one. I'll be doing something in D-, but mostly standard. This is standard tune. Standard tune is why I am, because when you have a 12-string guitar, you don't want to be moving it around too much. You know, it's really boring on stage unless you can tell jokes and tune, which some people can. Sometimes I do, but no. I have the one for the Balkan music. It's open G tuning, which makes everything easy because it's all about rhythm and simple melodies and speed. But it's an interesting question. Yeah, mostly standard. I'm a standard tuning guy most for the 90% of the time now.
Well, I just I want to say that for tomorrow at the concert, Neil will also have some CDs for sale. If you still have CD
That doesn't
players
sound
in
like
your
a
home.
question, Lisa.
It's not a question, but I know that sometimes people want that for their collections or anything. So there will be CDs available. I'm always selling something.
I
Neil.
know, but people don't buy CDs anymore.
And anyway, it's going to be an extraordinary concert tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's sweet of you. You got a question? Pardon?
The question is, what are you doing now?
What am I doing? I'm playing for you. I'm talking to you. What am I learning now? Well, I'm busy notating. I'm on Sibelius all the time trying to figure out how to notate this. Some of the stuff's really hard to notate. I'm doing that because during COVID, I was shut down completely for 2 years. I couldn't perform. I couldn't go. I'm not going to go abroad. I couldn't. And a lot of my concert halls were shut. And I'm just starting to get back into it again. So, you know what I did in the 2 years? I made a fabulous garden. I notated music. I went back and did the hard work. I started writing stories about my travels. I try to be creative, try as much as possible. But it was a tough 2 years for performers, especially me. I realized, oh, everybody's getting out and playing again. By the time I figured it out, I was a year behind almost, on booking. So right now, just trying to share my stories and share my music again with people. That's the main part of what I'm doing now. And I have a gypsy band that I'm playing with in as well. Anyway, yes. Not
Can you
really.
repeat the question?
Yeah, I heard the question. He's asking if I ever play electric 12-string. Like, well, this kind of is an electric 12-string, but I'm trying to emulate acoustic as much as possible. So, I mean, like the Birds or something like that. I want it to be as acoustic as possible as I can, and with projecting it, and that's all that matters to me. That's what I grew up with. I like the feeling of the vibration in my chest, and that's a beautiful thing about 12-string. I think it keeps you young because it's always vibrating, and it's amazing. Just you feel it in your ear. I mean, you can't really hear it necessarily, but you can feel it. It's a great instrument, maybe like a cello or something like that. Very great instrument, kind of hard to master. I know someday I hope to. Yes.
So I just watched a TEDx talk by Tommy Emmanuel.
Yes, Tommy, great
Yeah.
guitarist.
And he was talking about his inspiration being Chet Akins, and just listening to this. I mean, I don't know a lot about music, but I'm wondering actually if some of the roots of that style of guitar playing where you mimic other instruments like bass and drum and so on actually come from some of the folk traditions that you've studied, or if you think they may.
I don't think so necessarily, because in folk music, the guitar would have a, well, in Balkans, it would be the Bugardia, it was called, and it pretty much is a rhythm instrument. Everything has its some place. I'm trying to take all the melody, the rhythm, the bass, and do it all at once. That's not, I don't think that's in folk tradition at all. I'm just trying to mimic what I'm hearing from the whole group of players, and so I can play solo. But I don't think so. But people like Tommy Emmanuel is doing it on a 6-string and to great effect. And I never really studied anybody else or watched anybody else. So I know there are great players out there and all over. But I would just want to find my own way, and I always have. I haven't gone and looked at people and I want to do that and try to do that. No, but I don't do that. But I've tried to find my own path.
I was just curious how you came to be connected with Alfred University, or how you happened to be here.
Well, thank you. Thanks to Dr. Lance there. She invited me to come up, and it was 20 years ago, and I taught for 1 year, and yeah, she gave me the opportunity to come up here so I can have something on my resume, something that looks like something that looks real. Whoa, well, he was a professor. Well then, but thank you to Dr. Lance. She brought me, and I enjoyed my time here. Not the weather, but the scenery is wonderful when the sun comes out. I love Alfred, and it's good to be back. So thanks for having me here.
Any other questions for Neil?
Yes. Yes.
Recommend bringing, traveling and bringing your instrument, because that seems really essential to how you're having a cultural exchange and experience.
Well, I think music's like the universal language. I hate to be cliche, but it is. And if you want to connect with people, it was always a good way to connect people, especially guitar. The guitar is like a universal instrument. Oh, you have a guitar, and somebody will play. Yeah, it's a good icebreaker. It's a good way to meet people. Music culturally, especially, of course, American music has been well received for years. I don't know now, but everybody knows it. And of course, if you're an instrumentalist like me, I could go to any country and it was just, oh, okay, we understand that. I didn't sing, so that would make it a lot easier for me. But yeah, I would recommend it if you could. It's hard to travel with an instrument. I would travel. When I traveled around Europe, I had a backpack with the few belongings I had and 2 guitars slung over my shoulders, and it was not fun to travel like that. But it's the only way I could.
but it's easier than traveling with drums or a piano.
Yeah. Well, yes, of course. They always have been. You know, I didn't travel in the way most of us stay in hotels and five-star hotels and all that. Either maybe I was a guest of state and I had really nice digs, but usually I was with the people and getting introduced from one place to another and right in the middle of the culture. It wasn't like I was a tourist. I was a true traveler. I'd never had there and back. It was always go here, go there. It was very one place to another, continuing. It would continue. One thing would lead to another. And it's a whole way, a really different way to look at life. I mean, if you have the opportunity, most people don't. They have a vacation, they have this allotted time, they go, they come back. That was not my life. I went and I didn't come back.
Three parts. Do you have perfect pitch? Do you have the musical equivalent of a photographic memory? And how do you go from listening to a new set of music to reproducing your version of it?
Okay, well, perfect pitch. I may have perfect pitch. I am so lazy, I use a tuner, but I think my pitch is very good. When I don't use it and I want to listen, I kind of have perfect pitch, but it's not, I think you can develop it, but I don't think I use a tuner. I'm such a crutch because I have to be very fast on stage tuning or people lose their interest really quickly. So what's the second part? Oh, maybe not. You know, I would think of keys and colors, which is really odd. I think, you know, like A minor, A would be red and G or E minor would be blue in my mind. And I remember I have a good, well, obviously I can follow the course very well. I do remember, and I don't know how that works. I don't know how the mind works, but when I have something, I have it forever. And I think that's a really wonderful thing. And the third part was, hearing it. It's not 100%. Like I said, I'm not a good copier. I do the classical music and I have to check them. I go back to the music and check them and see how far off I am sometimes. I hear it in my head. I rewrite it sometimes. That's the problem. That's a big problem with me. I'll take a piece of music and start imagining it to be different from what it is and thinking, oh, I like this better. And then I go look at the score and I go, oh, no, I can't do that. People know this. I gotta fix this. Like when I learned I did Franz Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody #2 on the 12-string guitar, which is a very difficult piece. And I had to really pore over that score for a long time to make sure I was on track. It might do that tomorrow, but maybe not. Any other questions? I think most of it's hard work. And I would play till my fingers bled. When I was very young. And it's just, I think if you're going to master an instrument, I think that's what it takes unless you're, you know, Mozart or something, which I'm not. But I think it takes a lot of hard work, and then the payoff is later.
Well, we're kind of out of time, so thank you, Neil, very much.
Well, thank you so
Very
much.
interesting presentation.
Really appreciated being here.
And again, Neil will be performing tomorrow at Miller at 7:30.